We're here and we're back on the podcast. And are you looking to have a deeply fulfilling life? Are you one of those high-achieving entrepreneurs? Are you a purpose-driven professional? Well, Dr. Kimberley Linert is here to help you out, you specifically, to align your vision, values, and your inner clarity to get what you want in life and to get that life you deserve without stressing yourself, without overthinking, without making a lot of these common mistakes. So Dr. Linert offers high-level mentorship, private intensives, exclusive retreats for those ready to step into the powerful chapters of our lives. So we're here just to talk about some of these big ideas, right? True fulfillment, vision, blind spots or high performers, and how it all relates to this amazing technique that Dr. Kimberley has called the Optic Brain Fit method. So I can't wait to dive in. I hope you can't either. Dr. Kimberley, glad to be speaking with you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to share.
And excited to soak it all in. And speaking of that, what's your background? I can't tell if it's like opening like the gates of heaven, or is there a crib behind you? What's that represent?
It's a beach, and I just love the water and the beach, and it's so healing for me.
Well, great. And it's underrated, right? To decorate your space. Here I am in a black void, but to surround yourself with the positivity and have those goals and know what you want so you can get to that breakthrough and that transformation. And speaking of all that good stuff, what did I leave out of your bio or introduction? What just has you so focused and passionate? What are you all about?
I'm focused and passionate about helping people find what lights them up. And that's different at different seasons of life. So my podcast interviews people from different walks of life so that people can get ideas about what they might want to do their next step. And so that's what that's for. And then there's people who have been super successful and they're thinking, I need to do something else, or there's something else I want to do. And sometimes they even get criticism from outside where people say, well, you're so successful. Why stop doing what you're doing? And they're like, but there's something more. And they're looking for that missing thing. So you can have success without having that fulfillment piece. And that's where I help people.
Ooh, that sounds sort of interesting and delicate and nuanced. This idea that hopefully you'd evolve as a person, right? As you go through the years, the decades, that what got you here won't get you there. And then you might outgrow certain things. And then that can be sort of scary, right? That you're kind of dropping what has been so good to you because you want something better and something more. And so what does that look like exactly when someone comes to you and says, hey, Dr. Kimberley, a lot of what you said there about either like kind of growing or outgrowing something sounds great, but like what kind of words do they describe? What's their situation?
Well, the higher you go in your career or, in your influence, a lot of times that can get very lonely. In fact, I was just talking to a friend yesterday and she was saying, I spend a lot of my time, 90% of my time alone because I'm working on my projects and I get so much fulfillment out of working on my projects, but her social life is not there as much, so there's things that we give up for that success. So they'll talk about, well, yeah, I'm doing really well here. I've got the finances, we have the great vacations, but there's still something else. And sometimes it's their relationships. Sometimes it's just something they had thought of that they wanted to do since childhood, but they just never did it. And it's just time for them to step out and do it.
I love those perspectives of looking at maybe the life wheel or looking at those old hopes and dreams from childhood that maybe you put off and you delayed until next thing you know, well, you delayed it until forever. And so as far as people like getting their life back on track, what sorts of solutions have you seen?
So the first part is to really dig deep in to see what it is you really want. So this is a good place to start. I wrote this book, Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life. And it's a step-by-step guide to finding out what you like, what's important to you, what your values are, what people you want in your life. And it's very simple. I even said that, even a 10-year-old could pick this book up and go through it and answer the questions and find out what they want. But at different seasons, we might want something different. So as you're planning your life, this also helps you put it onto your calendar. As you're planning your life, you might want to take a look at those things every quarter, because right now you're taking the kids to soccer. But in the wintertime, there's no soccer. So what do? You take a look at your goals, your dreams, what you want for yourself, your family, your business, and you put those big rocks back in, as you will. People heard of putting the big rocks in first, and then the gravel, then the sand, then the water in a jar. Same
Yeah.
thing. You look and see, what are the big rocks again, and how do I want my life to look this quarter?
Well, very cool. And you make it sound so simple on paper and theory, but as you know, the fulfillment is the tricky part, right? Which is perhaps why someone needs to check out that book, or they need to, even better, have some help with you to get it all done. And I mean, what sort of just like hangups, missteps, struggles do you see happen when people try to get these big rocks in place?
Well, the most important thing is to know what your values are, because you can like certain things or be used to things. We get used to doing certain things, and so it gets familiar and comfortable. Where if we stepped out into the unknown and explored something else, we might find something more exciting. In fact, just this week, I worked with somebody from Sweden, and we went over what her values are as far as her next step in her career. And it took some time to do that, but we fleshed those out. And then I said, okay, now that you have your values, these are your five top values. Whenever you are making a decision, you say, is it aligned with my values? If it doesn't, you throw it out. If it does, you explore it further. So it's so important, because we're being true to ourselves when we do things according to our values. And when we don't, we're going to always feel unfulfilled.
And I love this concept because I've heard it in little tidbits, like just like every few months. This is one of these ideas that like I can't get away from it, right? The idea of maybe your business should have values, maybe you should have values, so that way you know how to get more of what you want and less of what you don't want. Also knowing that more of what you want might not be the same as what you've gotten. What you want might be something new, and it helps to dictate of these actions, these decisions that you might end up mulling over for too long until it takes so long. And also the idea of who you do want to let in your life, right? Because you're talking about perhaps like losing friends because you're getting maybe further in life or a different path than those friends you used to have. But then when the doors open for new friends, it's like, well, hey, do you bring someone in who drags you back down, or is worse, who do you let through the gates? You let those values dictate it. And it's like you think about if you're like dating in a relationship, when is it time to break it off, call it quits? If there's the red flags, right? They do things that you don't like. Well, that's a lot to judge, but you have these values and you kind of put these relationships, these actions through the how does it compare? And it seems to make it's definitely not simple or easy to generate the values, but once they're in place, like it simplifies the decision making process. And so speaking to that, I always find myself, I struggle with like what the values could be for me. And so do you feel like sharing like the Swedish lady or your values, like what those are?
Sure. So with her, we worked with career. So you might have a different value with your job, and different values when it comes to a partner, or someone you're looking for to date. So my values for a job might be one thing, but when it comes to someone I'm dating, one of my first values is kindness. I want someone to be kind. Where my first value with my job might be authenticity or loyalty, or I might have a different value for that. So you look at the different areas. So you can ask yourself a question: what is important to me for my career? And then you just start listing one or two words. Keep listing, keep listing, keep listing until you just run out of them.
Okay.
And then you go back and what are my top ones? Okay, let's put them in order. And there's different ways you can do that. In fact, in the book that I showed you earlier, it actually gives you a way to do it, because sometimes you look at them all and I'm like, I can't pick. Well, there's actually a way to do it. Now, I'm an optometrist, an eye doctor. So when you go to the eye doctor, they give you choices. They say, do you like choice one or two? One or two, which is clear? One or two, one or two, one or two. Well, I do the same thing with these values. What's important to you? Loyalty or authenticity? Loyalty or and you have to choose one. So
Right.
let's say you pick loyalty. Okay. So what's more important to you? Loyalty or money? Loyalty or money? And you have to choose one. And if you keep doing that, there's a way that you can see how many of each one you chose, and it numbers it for you. And that's all in the book. So you don't have to worry about thinking about it now. But yeah, it's explained in the book.
And that's an amazing system, and that gives us a good taste of what's to come. And so I'm
Mhm.
glad you brought up the optometrist thing, because how does that happen? How do you go from being an optometrist to having all these amazing insights about basically like life coaching and psychology? How did that transition happen?
Yeah, so optometrists check people's eyes for health and to check if you need glasses, contacts. But I specialized in something called behavioral optometry. And so I had a therapy center for many years, and I worked with people with brain injuries. I worked with CEOs with decision making. I worked with athletes. I worked with kids on the spectrum. I worked with kids having trouble in school, all these different people. And because of that background, I had to learn psychology. I had to learn emotional trauma clearing. I had to learn nutrition. I had to learn all sorts of things because when you're working with someone and you're making huge transformations in their life, you have to look at all the areas. You can't just look at eyeballs. And that's what most optometrists do. They look at eyeballs. And if your eyeball's not sick, they say you're fine. Well, I look at your eyeball, see it sick, and I'm like, where in the body is that coming from? Because everything in the body ends up in your eyes. So, you have to look at all those things. And so, what I did when I was working as a behavioral optometrist is I integrated people's vision and brains. And as I kept working, I realized I was doing even more brain work. So, I added more brain work into it. And then I realized that when you integrate the body with the vision and the brain, the results are sustainable. They're really sustainable. Because if you think of anybody, even if they've got dementia, if they're a musician, they can still remember how to play all the songs and sing all the songs. They might not remember who their sister is or their daughter is anymore, but they can still play. Why? Memory in the body. So what I do integrates into memory into the body, which is sustainable. And that's why it changes things permanently, but then it exponentially gets better and helps you grow more and more into who you want to be because that's already it's integrated. It's just part of you. That's the best way to put it. It's part of you.
I like that. And that's a wonderful origin and transformation story, this idea of always learning. And I like how you said about in your profession, like you had to learn this, you had to learn that. And it's a shame that a lot of people, adults, are saying, well, I'm done learning. Like I finished school. And it's like you have to always be learning. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not optional, right? It's required to get to where you want to get to in your profession, especially nowadays, right? Internet, AI, everything that's scary, that's changing. We have to always be learning, and you would hope that as the years continue, you become wiser, and that even if you did have the brain trauma, or you did have like the dementia or old age, there's still things you're using from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and maybe even you learned it in that job and you thought that was a waste, but hey, it came into play
Mm-hmm.
decades later, and we love that. And I like your just kind of your transferable skills you figured out, and now you apply it as far as the vision and looking in the bigger picture, and it's a beautiful metaphor. And so speaking to that, vision, both physical and internal, shows up or affects how we show up rather in life and in business. So can you unpack that a little bit, this idea of having vision in your life and having vision in your business, and what it means and why it's important?
Well, yes. First of all, we're talking about internal versus external vision. So when I talk about external vision, I'm talking about using your physical eyes. And there's a way you can use your physical eyes more efficiently so that you open up your vision. So you want to be able to focus on things, but you also want to be able to see what's around you. So many people go around focused, but they don't see what's around them. And so that can cause some upset, that can cause some stress, anxiety. If you just only see what's around you, but you can't focus, those are your people with attention problems. So you want to be able to use both of those. So that's your physical outside vision, being able to actually see things in your physical environment. But then you have your internal vision, which is more like your imagination. And you want to develop that imagination also. And when you work on your actually physical external vision, it enhances your imagination internal. And when they work together, wow, that's even better. So when you one way to do this is when you think of focus, that's like your goal that you're looking for. And when you can see what's around you, that's how you navigate. So when you're creating a goal, you got to know what you want, but you want to know all the pathways. If you only know one pathway and there's a rock in the middle of it and you can't get through, then that's a problem. But if you have a lot of pathways, you can still get to your goal easily without stress.
It's like when you're driving and you figure, well, if there's a hazard off on the side of the road, I don't want to be looking at that because I'll drive into it, but I want to be aware of that and have it in my peripheral. And you think about, even like I'm talking to you, right? I'm looking up at my web camera and you're down in the screen, and I have this other thing of some of my notes in your website, but it's like I'm kind of like, I hate the term balance, but I'm kind of balancing both, right? I like know what I'm focused on, and I know what's like secondary, and I'm aware of it, but it's not my focus. And I think that's it's wonderful to think about. And how do people, perhaps if they have the ADHD or they're off in the other extreme, how do they get this figured out where they're going for those goals, but they're not easily distracted?
Got it. That is really a loaded question. And that's like a volume of what I do as far as my work. So
Okay.
there's actually some things I can teach people to help them be able to use both parts of vision. Um, and so ADHD is just visual inattention. So if you can get the vision directed and have control over your vision, then you won't have those attention problems.
And are you one of those people that can remember, like, okay, 5 minutes ago there was a white car behind me? Are you good at developing those skills, or is that on the right track as far as like this attention development?
Um, I think that's just short-term memory. So I do
Okay.
work with people with their visual memory. So even people who say they can't spell and things like that, I can ease that. Doesn't take very long to teach that.
And so I like that you mentioned that. So when you figure about like the problems people have, right? If people have, say, like, dyslexia or short attention span, is there anything amazing that you've either maybe solved or helped with? Did someone ever come to you and say, I'm beyond fixing, Dr. Kimberly, can you help me? And you gave them some progress. Anything come to mind?
Oh, so many. So um, when I had my therapy center, when people didn't know what to do with patients, they sent them to me. And I would get this person and I see what was going on. And I'm like, okay. And everyone else has already tried their stuff on them and they couldn't get any results. And so what I do is I just look at the person and I say, okay, where is this person? What can they actually do? And I start them doing something they can actually do. And then I move them up in gradients. Okay, can you do this next thing? Can you do this next thing? Can you do this next thing? And I just start wherever they're at, and I find out what their goal is. And I'm like, we're gonna get there. But and sometimes I even invent things. So one time I had a little boy that he had such poor body tone that his balance was not good. So I put him up on a little rebounder mini tramp, and I told him I want you to stand on this and I want you to bounce. Well, he couldn't even stand on it. He had such bad balance that he couldn't even stand on it. So me and his mom were holding his hands. We said, okay, you're just going to bounce without lifting your feet. So he did that, and after a while he could bounce. And then I told him, okay, I want you to bounce this basketball. Well, his body wasn't strong enough to bounce the basketball. He kept losing it. So I put him up against a wall. I said, I want you to lean up against this wall, and I want you to bounce this ball. Well, once I leaned him up against the wall and he had support, he could bounce the ball. So you just start wherever people are and you give them something they can win at. Then they feel excited. Okay, I can do this. And then just give them the next thing they can win at, and just pushing a little by little until they get to where they want to go.
That's great life advice in general, isn't it? You wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
want to start running a marathon if you wanted to get healthy, but hey, could you walk around the block, or could you spend 5 or 10 minutes studying just something where you can win at it, and you can figure out where you are and just like make those small incremental improvements and have a habit and
Mhm.
stick with it and again get there. It's doable for many problems in life, not all, of course,
Mhm.
and sometimes we need someone else's help, right? We need someone else
Mhm.
like you or like a proven system. And I know that you developed something called the Optic Brain Fit method. So can you explain what that is for us?
Yeah, so that's kind of a fun part of what I do. So if you've heard of CrossFit, where you come in, and not everybody's familiar, but you come in, you have this workout of the day, and it changes all the time. So what Optic Brain Fit is, you come in and you have a workout of the day for your brain and your vision, and you do it in pairs, and people work together on the different tasks that work their brain, their body, that integrate everything, and it just makes it fun.
Well, yeah, that sounds great. Of just, and it kind of stays within your philosophy you've been speaking so far of like the incremental progress, the small doable wins, doing it on a daily basis, involving others. I'm sensing some patterns here, and I definitely in a few moments here want to circle back and talk about the optic brain fit method and how people know more about you. But before we do, I want to kind of get to a little bit of a tricky question, which is kind of a cheat for me, and it's this conversation we're having, all these topics we've been discussing. I'm sure there's like a really good question I could ask you, right? Something I just like haven't said already or wouldn't even know to ask you. So, what question should I be asking you? I just don't know to ask you.
I think the question is, what's the most important thing you can do for yourself?
Which is what?
The most important thing you can do for yourself is love yourself first. Think about what your needs are first. Take care of yourself in all these areas, just like my book, in every area of your life. Take a look and see what you need. And then once you do that, help others with a full bucket.
That's wonderful. That's nice. I know I can definitely use a reminder like that. Take care of yourself first, fill up your own bucket first, and then that way you can put the oxygen mask on others now that it's on you. Or there's so many metaphors for it, right? Pouring from an empty cup. And but even if we know it, maybe we need that reminder to take care of yourself first, and you're no good to anyone else if you're neglecting yourself for the sake of others. And it's important, right? People need you. The world needs you to be at your best and to do all these amazing things, finding joy and fulfillment in business and life. So if someone says a lot of what Dr. Kimberly has spoken about really made so much sense to me, and I want to take some next steps with her, I want to find out about this optic brain fit program and everything else she has going on. What are some next steps here?
You can connect with me on social media. I'm mostly on LinkedIn and Facebook. Um, Also, if I have a link tree on there too, and that has some links, and there's a space on there where you can get a 15-minute talk with me. So if you wanted to have a conversation about your next steps, we could do that, because that gives me an idea where you're at, because everybody is at different places, just like the people I work with in my therapy center. So I just need to know where you're at, and then I can recommend the best things.
Very good. And so few people actually take that step, right? And it's like, it's doable. You click a button, you choose a spot on the calendar, you show up, you have this meeting, and you say, hey, here's where I'm stuck. I'm like one of your kids that you helped where I tried everything else or everything else tried things on me, and I'm still at my wits' end. What the heck is wrong? Why am I still blocked? And so to get to some of those resources, you say that there's your link tree. So that's
Mhm.
linktr.ee/dr Kimberley Linert, and that's Kimberly with an extra E. That's Kimberley, last name Linert. Dr. Kimberly is an incredible life creator. She's here to help you connect and master and integrate. You look on that link tree, and the first button, at least as of right now, is that 15-minute connection call. You find her on YouTube at Incredible Life Creator, and you find her on LinkedIn at Dr. Kimberly Linert, where she says, once you begin to change, so will the world around you. And in the spirit of fun quotes that are sometimes stick with us, right? You mentioned earlier about the values. It reduces all this mess to like some just real succinct, concise ideas. Speaking of succinct, concise ideas, I always like to ask my guests for a fun quote or lesson that has served them in life or in business, because sometimes they're just so catchy, you pass them on and it sticks with someone for years, decades. So what do you have
Mhm.
for a fun quote or lesson?
Yeah, so this quote is well known, but I think it's so important. So once you're taking care of yourself, it's good to connect with and help other people. And this quote is by Zig Ziglar. You can have everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want.
That's very true, and that's very helpful. And as we're thinking about that, it's time to go and check out that link tree. We'll have it in the podcast show notes, but I like to be thorough. I like to mention it so that way you can find it. It's linktree/Dr. Kimberley Linert, and she is the creator of the Optic Brain Fit method. So that way we can get those problems figured out. She integrates vision, brain, and movement therapy for life-changing results. She guides leaders, entrepreneurs, and athletes toward their peak potential. So if this sounds like you, if you have this potential, but you know that life is hard, sometimes you get blocked, you have struggles, Dr. Kimberley is here to help you. You can find her on LinkedIn. You can find her on a Linktree. And thank you very much, Dr. Kimberley, for showing up and giving us these important reminders, but also new information of solving some problems, getting our mindset right. It's all important. It's all helpful. So thanks for being here and giving it to us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and for having this show where people can share these things.